The Amish are different. Yes, I know, it doesn't take a genius to know that that is a fact, and yeah, wherever the Amish go, they tend to stand out a bit. But when you think about it, the Amish are nothing more than simple farmers, who dress a bit different and have some very different customs. But when you also think about it, particularly in America, not so long ago, give or take a few years, a sizable minority of Americans were also simple farmers who had a simple way of living, and when put alongside the Amish, looked pretty similar. And so it begs the question, when did the Amish become noticeably different? We must first understand that the Amish, along with the Mennonites and Hutterian brethren, are members of a Christian movement known as Anabaptism. Due to their pacifism in opposition to infant baptism, the Amish and other Anabaptists have always stood out from other communities. This is because the term Anabaptist literally means to baptize again. It basically means that Anabaptists rebaptized adults who had previously been baptized as children, because they did not believe that baptizing an infant into a religion would be acceptable, because the infant, unlike an adult, had no understanding of what they were consenting to. This got them into a lot of difficulty with the European governments at the time, since they are originally from Switzerland, southwest Germany, Amsterdam and Tyrol, and formed during the period of the Reformation. Because of this Anabaptist viewpoint, young Amish adults must undergo the Amish rite of passage called Rumspringa, of which you may have heard, before being allowed to enter the congregation. Rumspringa is essentially a time when young Amish adults, normally those aged 16, are permitted to experience life outside of the community, and ends when a young individual chooses to either leave the community or be baptized into the Amish church. In any event, both Luther's Protestant Church and the Catholic Church considered this rebaptism to be heresy. Alongside this, the pacifism and non-resistance of the Anabaptist faiths is another key difference. The Bible has several references to this, including the main commandment, do not murder, and others including, do not resist an evil person, turn him to the other cheek also, Matthew 5:39. Blessed are the peacemakers, Matthew 5:9. The Lord will fight for you, you need only to be still, Exodus 14:13. This fundamental idea was shaped by the surrounding extremely aggressive regimes and churches. This viewpoint was also influenced by the Bloody Munster Rebellion of Anabaptists, who attempted to establish a communal government in Munster, a city in western Germany, between 1534 and 1535. These Anabaptists were violently and horrifyingly put down, tortured, executed in public, and displayed in cages that still hang on the Munster church today. There is also the well-known tale of the Dutch Anabaptist martyr Dirk Willems, who in 1569 was jailed and convicted by the Catholic Church for having been rebaptized. Willems managed to escape while being chased by a guard, who ultimately fell through the ice. Willems felt obligated to save his drowning pursuer, but nonetheless was re-imprisoned and burned at the stake, despite the rescued guard's objections. Hence, in the middle of the 17th century, a major portion of the Amish, Mennonites and other Anabaptist groups relocated to the New World, specifically to Pennsylvania, where William Penn, a Quaker and the founder of the province of Pennsylvania, promised religious freedom. The Anabaptists were welcomed with open arms, as both the Anabaptists and Quakers shared many values in common, including non-violence, religious autonomy, the separation of church and state, non-conformity to society, believers' baptism, and simple living. Yet, there were still significant problems, particularly with pacifism. When a national draft was implemented, this frequently got the Anabaptists into problems, most notably during the Civil War, World War I and World War II. Though this pacifism has since spread to a sizable minority within the United States, they have been and continue to be antagonised for what some view as too hard a stance on pacifism. And with all that out of the way, it's time to answer the age-old question: when did the Amish become noticeably different? About 1850, the more traditional and old order Anabaptist congregations started to break away from the more modern and progressive ones. A quick side note: many Mennonites and Hutterian brethren are not old order, and do not prohibit the use of technology. These groups live somewhat normal lives, and alongside this, different Amish communities have varying degrees of adoption of technology. Nonetheless, due to the decentralized existence of Anabaptism, there have always been different factions. However, between 1850 and 1878, these factions were unable to come to an understanding on a number of both progressive and conservative issues. Thus, groups began to reject them, and the old order groups, most notably the Amish, started to distance themselves from the progressive communities. It was at this time that some Amish groups that were not old order eventually amalgamated with the Mennonites. Although they adhered to strong Ordnung regulations, Ordnung being the German word for order, discipline, rule, arrangement, organisation or system, the Amish lifestyle up until about 1920 would not have been significantly different from that of their rural neighbours. The typical rural American family would not have travelled, cultivated, clothed or maintained a very different lifestyle than the Amish prior to the invention of modern conveniences like the car, tractor, telephone, electricity, radios, and many other consumer goods. The Amish, however, would have been noticeably different due to their more plain clothing style, with solid colour or black dress instead of patterns, more stringent religious standards, and meeting in fellow members' homes, since the Amish met in homes rather than churches. Even yet, the general standard of living would have been relatively comparable to that of the surrounding rural community, given that Amish education extends only to the 8th grade, and they are excluded from social security because they care for their own elderly. Most notably, the Amish did acquire some of these contemporary conveniences, but they did not adopt other new technology because they believed in putting family, hard work, God, and a basic way of life first. Another notable difference is that the Amish and certain Mennonite and Hutterites in the Americas, including Canada and Latin America, continue to speak German as their primary language in order to not conform, maintain their old ways, and distinguish themselves from the local modern population.
Wie geht's? Das ist ein schöner Tag hier, die Sonne ist schön, die Schnuggels sind besser, die Birdies sind singen.
This is also true for Pennsylvania, where throughout most of its history, a large portion of the state also spoke the German Pennsylvania Dutch dialect, which is extremely close to the dialect of the Palatinate area of Germany. But it's also noteworthy to note that in addition to the plain Dutch Anabaptists, many fancy Dutch Pennsylvanians with German descent also spoke Pennsylvania Dutch. Up until 1950, Pennsylvania had legislation recognizing both German and English as official languages, and public schools had the option of offering education in either language. It's also fascinating to also note that Pennsylvanian Dutch speakers frequently utilize the outdated Fraktur print in Coordinate script, which mostly fell out of usage in Germany after World War II. This has been me, Jack, and if you're Amish and somehow watching this video, please leave a comment down below.